retaining top talent. We have two really experienced speakers for y'all today that have some really amazing stories that I think y'all are going to get a lot to take away from it in regards to what you can take back to your community and their lessons learned. I'm going to briefly introduce them. They have a lot to get through. And then, of course, like a conference breakout session, we'll have plenty of time at the end for, Q&A. So as they're talking about their stories, giving their examples, lessons learned, make sure you write down notes and questions for the end, and hopefully we'll have a really good discussion and get a lot out of this. So we'll be here for the next hour. All right, so we have Tom Harmer and Catherine Bennett. Tom is currently the town manager of Longboat Key, Florida. Yes, we can all be jealous that he is the town manager of Longboat Key, Florida. He has over 35 years of experience in local government, serving in Sarasota County, Tallahassee, Titusville, been all around the state. Also has a strong background in emergency management, which I thought was really interesting. And so we're really excited to have Tom here to give us some great perspective of how he's done just that, engage, motivate, and retain top talent in multiple local government organizations across the state of Florida. And then we have Catherine Bennett from Athens, Clarke County, Georgia. Any dog fans in the audience? No? Whoop, whoop. Okay. Come on. All right. So Catherine is the Organizational Development Administrator, or CEO, in Athens, Clarke County, and they have been doing some great things there. But outside of Athens, Clarke County, Catherine has been working in this space for over 25 years with state, local, federal level, all levels of government, nonprofits, coaching, inspiring, helping organizations think about how they motivate and retain top talent. So two really dynamic speakers. I'm excited from y'all to learn from them today. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tom. And we'll take questions at the end. So let's give our presenters a round of applause as Tom comes on up.
Thank you. I hope you don't mind. I'm not going to sit behind the desk or a podium. I prefer to stand out here in the crowd. So when Kaylee said experienced, I took that to mean old. But this is a good conference because it makes me feel a little bit younger. And being the town manager in Longboat Key, the average age of residents in Longboat Key is 73. So I am one of the youngest residents on Longboat Key. Our mayor is 85. Our vice mayor is 82. We had our most recent election, we had someone running on a platform of youth. They were 66 years old. And that's a true story. And so you can help me click the next. So I won't go a lot into my background, but I did want to touch on my first two government jobs. My first government job started at Parris Island, South Carolina, the United States Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps trained me to be an interrogator. So I was a Marine Corps interrogator. Interesting profession. When I left the Marine Corps, they took a lot of my tools away from me. They took away my bamboo shoots. They took away my battery charger. They took away my bucket and water and towels. But one of the things that they leave you with, and this is true in interrogation school, they say the most important skill of an interrogator is to listen. And we trained day and night on how to listen to someone. Very interesting as a young Marine. Well, when I left the Marine Corps, my first local government job was as a 911 dispatcher. And again, my first day on the job, they said the most important skill for a 911 dispatcher is to listen. So as a young Marine and as a young local government professional, that was kind of ingrained in me. And now I started my career in the Marine Corps in 1975. I started my local government career in 1978, April of 1978, so 41 years ago last month. And I've tried to remember that as much as I can. As a manager, sometimes you may get caught up into things and forget about that. But I've been very fortunate in my career, and I think that listening piece is something that I want to remember through the rest of my career. So I'm going to talk to you, and I'll try and cover this rather quickly so we have time for questions. But some acronyms, and EIG is Employee Input Group. Interesting listening to the keynote, talking about innovation teams. This is my first ELGL conference, and it's a little bit different than when you go to, say, an ICMA conference. And so I'm looking forward to the conference, but we didn't think about what we were doing as innovation teams. We thought of it more as how do we engage with our employees, especially our high-performing employees. But I think it ties directly to, out of that came what I would say are innovation teams for the agency that I worked for. So 1.0, 2.0, PT is post-Tom, because I left Sarasota County a year ago, and I've kept in contact with them, and now I'm in Longboat Key, and we now have EIT instead of EIG. So going right along. How many of you know where Longboat Key or Sarasota County is on the west coast of Florida? So Sarasota County, again, west coast of Florida, south of Tampa. Longboat Key is an island off of Sarasota. It's 11 miles long. It's a half a mile wide. We have cameras on each end to take your picture and your license plate and run it as you enter the island. It's not a very diverse community. We have challenges like every community, but we're 96% white. We have an average or median income of over $100,000 a year. Average home price is over $1 million a year. Average condominiums over $500,000 a year. We have affordable housing issues, but it's a different kind of affordable housing issues. We don't have homelessness. We don't have those type of things, but we do have a lot of other challenges. We have, go to the next slide. We have 133 employees in the town of Longboat Key. 3 of them live on the island, and I'm one of them. So there's only 2 other employees that live on the island. So we do have challenges with workforce housing and other things like that. Previously, I was the county administrator in Sarasota County, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Longboat Key is in Sarasota County. It's off the coast. In Sarasota County, we had just under 2,300 employees, $1 billion a year budget. Our average age of our employees was just under 48, but it's still an older retirement kind of based community, just like Longboat Key is. But in Longboat Key, the average age of the residents is even higher than it is in Sarasota County. I have a video that I can't show you, so we'll go right past that. So if you want to, I don't know if you can hit or go to the next slide. There you go. So what I want to spend my time on is telling you a little bit of a story. And it wasn't a very thoughtful process for us. We kind of stumbled into it, and I'll explain that. And I think what ended up was both a process to engage with our high-performing employees that we went through this process to identify, but it also was a development of their talent to help us with innovation in the organization. So it ended up being both of those things. So first off, as the county administrator, and I had been maybe a year or 2 in the position. This goes back about 5 years now. And 2,300 employees in the county administration building, multi-story, 6-story building. I was in the lobby, busy activity. That's where our commission chambers are. There was employees walking around, public walking around. And one newer employee, recent administrative assistant in our public Parks and Rec department, came up to me and said, "Excuse me, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk to you." And it was really kind of interesting because no one's ever said that to me before. I try to be the person in the elevator that says hi, in the parking lot that generates conversation. The previous county administrators were kind of known as Mr. Such and Such and had a suit and tie. I hate ties. I wear them when I have to. It's one of the reasons why I went to Longboat Key. They have commission meetings where the commissioners refuse to wear ties. They don't even wear socks. But I try to be Tom. I've always been Tom in my opportunities in the years I've been in the business, and try to be more informal. But the employee came up and said, "I don't know if I'm allowed to talk to you." She was a little hesitant, but she explained. She said, "I'm new in the organization. I just recently got my MPA, and this organization is a little stodgy and old and bureaucratic. And who do I talk to about? I've got ideas." And I felt terrible and bad, so I said, "Well, I'll take care of it. Give me your name. We'll figure something out." I went back and asked the deputy county administrator and the assistant county administrators and our 23-member leadership team, why did she have to come up to me? Why? What do we need to do? And so if you go to the next slide, we formed what we called, and it was not very creative, an employee input group. Because going back to being an interrogator and a 911 dispatcher is I wanted to start listening. I wanted to understand why she felt that way and what could we do about it. So we started this session. What we did is at first we asked department heads, who are your high performers? Who are your really motivated employees? And give us names. And they did, and we got 30 or 40 names. And then we asked some other people that we knew were really high performers, hey, is there anyone we're missing on the list? And we got a few more names. And we just started with that group, invited them to a meeting with me. And I sat on a bar stool and they all sat around me. And I just said, let's talk. What can we do to engage with each other so you have an opportunity to be active in the organization and I can understand maybe some things that we need to be thinking about from a work culture or work environment standpoint. So I wanted to create that senior management time with employees. I wanted to give them a chance to share a little bit of their story. And I didn't want it to be, let's take on an assignment, let's make it working, let's roll up our sleeves. I just wanted it to be in the beginning like a brown bag almost. Let's just shoot the breeze. And so we did that. It was voluntary. They were invited. It was based on their reputation. It was based on their attitude. It was based on their interest. And it was all inclusive. So if someone came to us and said, well, what are these secret meetings? Why did they get invited? We said, well, come on. We didn't stop anyone from participating. And so that was one of our, after one of our meetings, we took a shot. I'm up on the top, sitting up there. But that was our group. And we met for several years, quarterly, and just talked about different things going on. And it evolved, and I'll share that with you. It was quarterly. We had 30 plus regularly attending. The group was probably 40 plus, but at every meeting we had 30 plus. We had icebreakers. I would sit and share them what's going on strategically, what's going on with the county commission, what are we working on from a leadership team standpoint. We'd have discussion to get their input on some of the things that we were doing. And that just was evolving. And at the end of every meeting, I would say, are any of you coming back? And all of them would raise their hands. So we would schedule the next one for the next quarter. And during that process, we had a commission meeting. And we had 2 commission chambers in the county, one north, one south. Once a month, we'd have a south meeting. We were in the South Commission meeting. And the meeting got over a little bit early. Our meetings would start at 9 a.m. and go typically till 4 or 5. And we'd have 4 of them a month. And so it got over maybe at 3 or 3:30. And so I took my car and I was driving out back behind the commission chambers, and there's our fleet yard. And there was a big fence. And I've been in the front door, and I've met with some of the staff before. But again, I was still relatively new. So I got out of my car and looked over the back side of the facility. Bless you. And I looked over the fence, and it was a solid fence, so you couldn't see, but I kind of climbed up and looked over the fence, and if you go to the next slide, we had like 200 vehicles sitting back there, and some of them looked like that. I don't know how long they've been there, but it looked like years. They were overgrown with weeds. There were boats and trailers and mowers and cars and trucks, 200 of them, I would guess. And so that I was trying to figure out, how does that happen? How long has that been sitting there? How much are those assets worth? You could tell they weren't being used. They were surplus vehicles, but they were just sitting there. And so this idea came up. So I went back to the employee input group and said, I just saw this. I mean, I can't believe that. I went to the directors and the deputy county administrator, assistant county administrator, said the same thing. What the heck's going on? Why is that? And why? What is going on? What is our policy? How does this happen? And I went to the employee input group, and they're like, well, why don't you let us fix it? And it's like, well, what do you mean let you guys fix it? And they said, well, let us study it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to form a committee, and it's going to be 2 years, and all of that. And so out of this came what we called PIT teams, and maybe that's an innovation team or an I team or whatever. We call it a productivity improvement team. Now, as I think back, we're probably not the most creative group, but we came up with these terms that made sense to us. And so we put together productivity improvement teams. And again, this kind of came out of this group of employees to say, we have expertise in, an HR professional who did a lot of process mapping. We had an individual who used to work for the Alliance for Innovation and did consulting with local governments around the country. And we had some financial people who had some technical writing experience. And we had others who were used to doing peer analysis and comparable kind of studies. And so we put together 5 or 6 people out of this group of 30 or 40 and said, hey, okay, you're going to be our consultant. Instead of us going, and we had $1 billion a year budget. We had a lot of money in Sarasota County. The tax base in Sarasota County is over $60 billion. And so We could have hired a consultant, paid him $100,000 and figured it out. So we said, well, let's try this. And we assigned the group to do this. And they got together on their own without anyone from management involved. It was just this team. And they went through this whole process of analyzing it as if we hired them to be the consultant. We agreed on a project charter and expectations and what the deliverables would be in a schedule. They presented all that to us. And they came back with some recommendations, and I'll mention that in just a minute. So we then said, well, darn, let's take this out and do it again. And so the idea was, if we have areas that need attention, the departments may be too busy, lacking resources, have other priorities, and we have this group of 40 people that have expertise. And I think the biggest thing that interests me is what I heard from a lot of those employees were, we like things that stretch us. We want to try, and we had individuals that were working in Parks and Rec in maintenance of parks or beaches. And they were now working on a study to analyze surplusing vehicles. And that was really exciting to them. And many of these, they had advanced degrees. We had PhDs, we had MPAs, and we had MBAs. But they were in different spots. The one lady that came up to me, she had an MPA, but she was the administrative assistant. She was like the receptionist and answered the phone in Parks and Rec. And she didn't get a chance to do this kind of work. So we said, okay, let's formalize this a little bit and create this program. And so we said the request can come in from anywhere, from throughout the county. We'll sanction it, we'll support it, we'll make sure they have the resources, we'll make sure the departments give them the time to work on it. And we want to make sure it's multi-departmental and multidiscipline, and we'll sign off on that charter that I mentioned. Go ahead. And so surplus vehicles was our first one. They reduced the time to dispose of those vehicles from 8 months to 4 to 6 weeks. And I don't even think it was 8 months. I think in the beginning it seemed like, from what I saw, it was a couple of years. But we had a very, very weird process. We would go in the budget process, request a new vehicle. The commission would approve it as part of the budget. We'd go buy the vehicle, and then we would just drive the old vehicle out to this lot and park it. And so there was no motivation, because we had already gotten the money from the commission, to do anything with that vehicle, and it sat out there. And so they were able to come up with new forms, new guidelines, and a process so that when the budget was approved, the authorization of surplus happened at the same time, because we had to go back to the commission 8 months after we bought the vehicle and ask if they'd let us surplus the vehicle that we already replaced with a new one. So very good. We took on a second one, which I think this one in retrospect was probably too big for the team, but they still did an unbelievable job. You can go to Sarasota County and Tracy Miller, and if any of you guys know her good, but if not, she used to work for the Alliance for Innovation. She's the strategy manager for Sarasota County. She worked with me to help evolve the PIT teams, but she can get you copies of these reports. These are $100,000 reports. I mean, they're very professionally done. And so they also looked at our development review. They developed 36 recommendations. What was unique about this one is this came from the department head. The department head came to us and said, I need help. Can you guys look at the development review process? And our employees that we put on this team didn't work in planning or building. And they went to development review committee meetings, planning and zoning board meetings, commission meetings. They called other communities. They went to other communities. They kept going back and forth with our employees on feedback. And this was very well received by the department, but it completely revamped the development review process. It probably took 8 months for this one. It was a very long one and probably too broad for our second one, but they did a really good job. Then the third one was real estate services. It was a general fund operation. So it was just paid for by the general fund. We wanted to look at creating an internal service fund on how they would bill or charge. And so, again, these were different groups. It wasn't the same group of 5 or 6. We pulled different groups out of the base of the 30 or 40 employees, and then we assigned them this project, and they developed the entire transition to go to an internal service fund from a general fund operation. And then the fourth one, and then this will be the last one that I worked on before I left, but we knew a local government near us was getting in trouble with their security cameras. There was an article in the paper. They didn't have the recordings. Cameras were broke. They didn't know how many cameras they had. So I immediately, when I read that article, got very nervous and went to our staff and said, do we know how many cameras we have? And they're like, cameras? Do we have any cameras? So it was kind of scary. We found out we had like over 2,500 cameras. and we found out that we don't even know where they're all at, and some of them don't work, and some of them were different types. Some were connected, some were not, some had standalone DVRs. And so we put together a team and said, we need a number one, inventory, number two, we need a policy, and number three, we need to standardize, et cetera. So they went in and they did that. Again, they had no IT experience, not anything else, but through peer reviews, comparable analysis, meeting with IT, meeting with the departments, studying it, they came back with some really good recommendations for the county. So after that one, we met with the EIG group and really kind of talked about what's next for this group. We've been working this a couple years. What's next for us? And so we needed to look at how we sourced from the group, because we didn't want to wear out. There was a couple people that served on multiple teams, and we felt like we might be starting to wear them out because they had regular jobs in the county. And so we were looking at that. We also had turnover of EIG members. And I take a certain view of that. I used to work for a fire chief. I came up in the fire service. After being a dispatcher, I became a firefighter. Ultimately, I became a fire chief. But before I was a fire chief, I was a deputy fire chief, and I worked for a guy who had a list of names behind his desk in a frame, just a list of names. And I always wondered, why does he have that list of names behind his desk? And I finally asked him, I said, what's the significance of that frame and that list of names? And he said, that's what I'm most proud of. I said, oh, wow, what are you most proud of? Those are the lists of people who've left me and went on to become fire chiefs in other cities around the country. And so I thought, wow, because sometimes we think, oh my gosh, we have to retain. It's all about retention. I don't think it's all about retention. I get excited when people can move on. And I've worked in 5 communities in 41 years, starting in 1978. And so I've worked for 4 years in my first community. I worked for 11 years in my second one. I worked 13 years in my next one. I worked 6, and now I'm working a year into this position. But I think it's okay to leave. You don't want your high performers to leave, but sometimes there's not an opportunity for them to go, and maybe they'll come back at some point. And we just want to create a culture that we try to keep them as best we can, but there's nothing wrong with turnover. So we also saw departments now picking this up in Sarasota County, where departments were creating their own pit teams and doing their own projects. They were putting groups of people together, giving them a chance to do something more than their regular job. And we started to evolve a little bit the agendas. We started to do senior manager deep dives, and we had 23 members on our leadership team. So we would bring one in every quarter and we'd ask them to just talk. Tell them how you became a senior manager. How'd you become a director? How'd you become a deputy county administrator? And one of the things we asked them to do is talk about life balance. What do you do to help you, get through the rigors of professional development, and what are your hobbies and how does that work for you? And we found that to be very interesting to the group as well. Then we also started to do training on how to do consulting, because others who hadn't been on a team yet also wanted to be assigned to a team. Post-Tom, EIG post-Tom. So last year I left and went to Longboat Key, and since then they put together a competition among the 30 or 40 employees and said, come back to us with some ideas for what you guys would like to work on. And they came back, and 2 of these programs won the awards. One was to expand an intern program countywide that they wanted to be part of. They wanted to be like the ambassadors for their department, and they wanted to have a young student that was working on an MPA or some degree related to public administration and bring them in an intern and work with them, kind of help. They wanted to already start paying back. And then the County Connect, they also wanted to be, this is a very motivated group, to be ambassadors to the rest of the county, the 2,300 employees, and they wanted to have brown bag lunches where they represent their department. So whether it was Parks and Rec or libraries or public transit or fire and EMS or finance or whatever it was. So those are the 2 programs they've now implemented in addition to everything I've just mentioned. And then a little bit of a reset for me. If you go to the next slide. Very interesting career-wise for me. I loved working for Sarasota County. I had the full support of 5 commissioners. Felt like we'd made a lot of progress. I got a call one day from the press, and they said, how do you, can you comment on Longboat Key? And I said, well, it's an island off of the county. I know, it's one of the 4 cities in Sarasota County. What do you mean comment on it? Well, their commission just voted 7-0 to pursue you. And it's like, well, what does that mean? And oh, by the way, I have a budget meeting in the morning, so I'm focused on that. I don't have any comment about that. And I immediately hung up, called the 5 county commissioners and said, I just got this word call from Longboat Key. I don't know what it's about. I just want to let you know. And I'm not looking for another job. I'm not interested. I haven't applied anywhere. So I just want to be clear about that. So I was, I guess, lured away because a couple months later I finally said, because the mayor was even quoted in a meeting, go get him, which is a little scary. But I was lured away, I guess. So I put in a 5-month notice. It was in July. I started in December, and it was a pretty smooth transition. I recommended someone to replace me. He was an assistant county administrator. They moved him in the interim, and then within 6 or 9 months, they appointed him as the permanent where he sits now. So it's been interesting, though, because the county commission's not happy with me. Well, the county chair is not that happy with me, because we're now up to 8 going on potentially 9 employees that have come over to Longboat Key. So just these are a couple headlines in the newspaper. And we've been very fortunate. I've had the county chair went to the county attorney and asked that an ordinance be drafted to prohibit senior county employees to come back before them for at least 2 years and present. And the other 4 commissioners voted it down, so it was a 4-1 vote. But she did propose an ordinance, and she's told me, and she's a former state senator, very feisty, and said, you're done, no more. You can't have any more employees. And I said, by the way, we're paying them less than you were, and they're still coming over and working with us on Longboat Key. So we're very fortunate from a recruitment standpoint. These were very high quality employees. I feel very lucky. We have to retain them, but we have a good team on Longboat Key. I'll give you one quick story related to EIT, because now we're trying to figure that out. When I first went over there, again, older community, 73 I think is average or median age. I mentioned to you the mayor is 85, vice mayor is 82. When I first went over there, we were very active in the county on social media, and our Twitter and our Facebook and all those other things. We had a communication department that was large. I had handlers when I went out and presented somewhere and talked and dealt with the press. But when I went to Longboat Key, the assistant to the town manager, she's training her 3rd town manager in 21 years, she said, I heard you do this social media stuff. I just want to be clear, we don't do that in Longboat Key. And I don't have a Twitter account. I don't know what tweeting is, and I'm not going to do it. So that was my introduction to Longboat Key. I will tell you, she now does tweet. We do have a Twitter page. We're still in our infancy. When I was with the county, we were trying to get to 10,000 followers. We were at 9,000 something. We have, I think, 600 and some now. Again, we're only 6,900, 7,000 population year round. But still, I had to go to, I went and found some highly engaged, motivated employees, happened to be younger employees, but I found 3 of them and said, because I heard that they were active in social media. And I said, help, no one in this town, even the department head said, no one tweets here. We don't know what that is. And so these 3 employees activated our accounts. We now have a Facebook, we now have a Twitter account, and they just handle it. It's not through any department head. It's directly through me. And I've said, I gave them some kind of parameters of what acceptable tweeting and messaging would be, and I've let them run. And I said, if you have a question or if you're not sure, I'll trust your judgment, come to me, and I'll bless it, or we'll talk about it. And so, for a year now, this was stood up in the first month or so. They've now been doing that without any department oversight. So as I finish up, we now have formed an employee input team on Longboat Key. Smaller organization, 133 employees versus 2,300. This is our initial meeting a few months ago. I asked the department heads again, and they're nervous. When I ask department heads to give me a name of an employee that I want to talk to, they get, well, should I come too? No, I don't want you there. Well, why don't you want me there? Well, then I need to talk to them because there's certain things, you sure you don't want me there? And it's like, no, this is just a brainstorming. Yeah, but shouldn't I be there to hear them brainstorm? And we say, no. So we put together, we had a couple that couldn't show because they were traveling at conferences or had a family issue. but we formed our initial group. We've had our first meeting. I see some additions because these were the first group that department heads identified. And I know there's some others that we want to add to it. And again, my approach is if anyone wants to come, they can come. And so we have agreed to, for now, a quarterly cycle, and we're going to look at how do we, number one, listen, and number two, figure out how we can continue to engage them and give them opportunity to work on things that maybe stretch them a little bit. So that's it for me. Hopefully I didn't take any of Catherine's time, but I'm sure I'll be here at the end for any questions, so thank you.
Hi, y'all. How are you doing? Good. Would you raise your hand if you have an open seat next to you, because there's a lot of people standing and sitting. Y'all want to take a minute to move while I'm switching my slides? Anybody? Like, no, I love standing. Sitting is good. Ta-da! All right, my name is Catherine Bennett. I have been excited to be here for such a long time. I work at Athens-Clarke County Unified Government in Georgia, in Athens, Georgia. Go Dogs, just saying. Black and red, love it. Way to go. I think it's very interesting as I was sitting here listening to Tom, the interesting dynamics in this room is a couple of years ago at ICMA, and I don't know if you all recognize Rob in the back of the room from ICMA, Rob Carty. He is a legend over at ICMA. Tom and I met speaking at that engagement, and so there was also a speed coaching session, which is amazing. If you've ever, wherever you live, go back and do speed coaching. It's amazing. It sounds exactly like what it is. It's like speed dating, but every 15 minutes, you have a room full of coaches, old people like me, and people come around and like share business cards and say, hey, what are you doing? Hey, I'm trying to get here. And that's how I met Kaylee. We were sitting at a table and Kaylee came around, and we have kept in touch for 2 years, and she's been promoted 3 times since I saw her 2 years ago. So, and just to know that GMA is in the room too, wave, yes, from my state. I just think it's very progressive, amazing group of people here, and I hope to meet with all of you while the conference is going on. High performance work culture. It's a set of behaviors and norms looking for superior results. A trusting environment. I was working with a group of people this week back in Athens, and the group has lost trust in each other. And it's a really important group because this group has something to do with elections. And so we're doing some retreats, some facilitations, and trying to get that group together, talking and building trust again. And you don't just get trust, right? You have to build it. So it can take a lifetime of building trust and a moment to lose trust. So how do I create a high performance culture? I would imagine that nothing that I'm about to say is news to anyone in this room. Everyone in this room, you're my favorite person to study. I read a lot. My last slide has my contact information on it, and if you find a really cool article about the kinds of things they're talking about here in the conference, I hope, especially as it comes to recruiting and retention of your high potential employees, I hope you'll send it to me. Collaboration, innovation. Yesterday's session talked a lot about what word kind of throws people off, and innovation was one of them. And agility, and being able to pivot, and communication, wellness, work environment, performance focus, mission and vision alignment. When you interview a really high potential employee and you say, what's important to you? If you come to our organization, and they're going to say the same things. I want to make a difference in your community. I want to be involved. I want to grow. I want to be cross-trained. I want to be engaged. I want to be retained. And If not, then Tom is going to go see you in Longboat Keys, because that's where everybody seems to be jumping to, which is a beautiful place. But the next, how do you create this high culture organization? Engaging your employees. We have 1,600 employees, and we try really hard to hear the front line, hear from the middle of the group, and not just having the highest level of government, the directors and the managers doing all the decision making, talking, data gathering, but really reaching down and hearing from the whole organization. And I'm proud to say that we're doing a good job of that. The culture, that's another thing. When you have a high potential employee you're trying to snatch from another organization, or they come to you, or you're trying to recruit them, they're going to ask you about your culture. And the answer is going to vary from each one of you, you know, what you would say to that question. And what I would hope you would say that it's an innovative culture. It's a progressive culture. You're going to have a lot of autonomy here. We're open to new ideas. We're members of the Alliance for Innovation, GMA, ACCG, ICMA, all the alphabet soups. You're going to have a chance to grow. You're going to be cross-trained. And we're very open to your ideas, and you're being brought here because of your experience. And this is the type of culture. Hopefully you, when you are interviewing people, you're very articulate about your culture, because the group of people who sit in this room, the group of people who are sitting in the keynote this morning, the group of people, the 150 people who were yesterday afternoon having a great time over at the facility, this group of people, culture is really important. It's not about the money, it's not about the title, it's about the culture. Am I going to grow? Am I going to make a difference in this community? If you can't answer that, and all 1,700 of our employees want to know, am I making a difference? Does it matter if I show up? And the answer is yes, you're going to make a difference, yes. And each person in your organization should understand their role in the mission, in the vision, in the strategic plan of your organization. Putting the right people, you all hold, well, some of you are way too young. Who knows John, Mr. Collins, who wrote the book, yay, one? He wrote the book, Help Me, I'm having a moment, senior moment. Thank you, Good to Great, yes. I knew I could remember it. This book is not new, but it has some very cool, time-tested, true points to it. And one of them is, you know, you can have the best mission, the best vision in the universe, but if you don't have the right people in the bus, you're not going to be taken into this amazing strategic plan that you just paid a consultant, you know, $1 gazillion for. If you don't have the right people on the bus, and then the reason I have the picture is because they have to be in the right seats. Sometimes people outgrow their jobs. Sometimes people's jobs outgrow them, right? So a lot of managers pay attention to those non-performers, the people who are not meeting expectations. That's a pity. Who should managers be focused on? Somebody blurt. The people who are not meeting expectations, or the people who are killing it? The high performers. 80% of everybody back home where you work, they're just punching in the clock. 20% of the people back home where you work are doing 80% of the work, 80% of the heavy lifting. And there's a great video called Move Your Bus. You can Google that. It's on YouTube. And there's this guy talks about runners. And you have runners. So let me see if I can get up here without stepping or falling. Yes. Okay, so on your bus that you're driving, you have people who are sitting, Yeah, this is an okay job. I'm punching in, punching out. It's all right. You have people are standing saying, I'll give a little bit of effort, I guess. Then you have people who are walking, and they're like, you know what? I really believe in this place. And then, guess who you have out here? The runners, right? And the thing about the runners is a lot of people don't pay attention to them. Because what does the boss think about the runner? They're going to keep, no matter whether I acknowledge, thank, you know, it's a huge problem that people think that the runners are just going to keep on running and they don't need any kind of feedback. They don't need any kind of thanks. And sometimes what the runners get are the greatest problems in the organization. They're like, thanks a lot for giving me this mess. You know, and I think it's all in the explanation of giving you this mess. Well, actually, this is a huge problem facing our community. The mayor of Durham spoke this morning. I wanted to come and live here. I was like, wow, what an amazing, visionary, awesome guy that he's thinking about these things, and his council's thinking about these things, and the department and the community is thinking about these things. So just know that 90% of your time is going to be spent on 10% of your employees. Those 10% are not meeting expectations, and while you're focusing on them, the runners are leaving. And so they are your greatest flight risks. The people in this room are the greatest flight risk when you go back home. It's because you need to be recognized, you need to be challenged, you need to understand your career path, you need to know that you're making a difference in your organization and in your community, and you have to see how your work matters. How do you retain this group? Ignite the sun. I thought that was amazing. That's what I think of high potential employees. They're just like an ignited sun, walking around just with brilliant ideas, lots of energy, well-read, very connected, and having really neat ideas. Bless you. And not being afraid of failure. That could be a whole conversation about getting some people off the bus. That's huge. You need to get the people who are not meeting expectations off the bus, because what does it do when you keep them on the bus? What does it do to the team around you? When I get to continue to be low performer, nobody's dealing with me.
It brings your whole team down.
You think that impacts morale? You know it does. And then everybody gets the same pay raise, and you're thinking, I'm out there killing it. Joe back here, Susie back here, sitting on the ground doing jack squat, and that's very demotivating to me. So help me. These are things you want to talk to your high pose. You're making a difference by doing this. Surrounding yourself with people who are on fire. That's what I think is exciting about this conference, is everybody's on fire about innovation. You know, and next practices and what's coming around the corner. And it's just really cool because everybody's high here, but in a legal manner, if you will. Because we're talking about next practices and what's coming next. So it's very exciting. When you interview for a job, you know, or someone interviews with you, they're going to say, what is your leadership style? And I hope you, A, ask that at your next interview, B, that you are asking it when people interview with you. Here's my management style. Here's my leadership style. I'm going to give you a lot of space to run. I'm going to give you the equipment to run. One day I was sitting at a retreat, and one of my managers, the manager of our government, I was eating some M&Ms, which I shouldn't have been, but I was just wailing on these M&Ms. And he came up to me and goes, Catherine. I was like, Your Majesty. No. And he said, if you were given no limits, what would you do with organizational development? And I was like, OMG, just one moment. I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and I do this. And I thought, man, I'm so glad I work here, to have someone ask me that question. What would I do if there were no limits? And so I hope that's the kind of culture you're creating, the kind of culture that really encourages you, and seeking out people who think differently than you. Is everybody here finance? Is everybody here HR? Is everybody here transportation public works? So what you're showing me that everybody here is different department, right? But what do we have in common? You gotta scream it. What do we have in common? Can you say it louder? We're high, yes. Now I hear you. I loved this. Treat me like a number, and I will return the favor. The bigger your organization gets, or the further you get away from the front line, you need to understand that's what people are thinking. Next slide, please. Deal-breaking behaviors that break trust and have your best people quit. False promises. You need to deliver what you say you're going to deliver in the presentation, in the interview, because people remember it. They're writing it down, okay? The worst thing, I can't even believe people do this, but I know from all my reading, and I read every day about leadership, that people are stealing each other's ideas. And great job, subordinate. Love that idea. Could you write a little executive summary? And then taking that to mayor and council going, well, I have this great idea. You know, I hate to think that that happens. I like to think we have a more honest and genuine and transparent group of people that we work with in local government, but taking credit for someone's idea. I have 2 subordinates, and they are always in front of the decision makers presenting their projects and their findings and their requests for information. Withholding information is also a way to lose your runners. Damaging someone's reputation, misrepresenting accomplishments of others, favoritism. My mom lives in Florida. She has 6 kids, 18 grandchildren, a great-grandchild. She has dementia. She doesn't really recognize me anymore. But what she was able to do was to love all of us equally, which I thought was amazing. Like, Mom, am I your favorite? And she's like, no. No, I didn't say it to her. Wouldn't do it to her. I'm a mom, and I would never want somebody to ask me that. But being able to lead without having favorites. You might have someone that you resonate with, like, wow, they're really a runner. They're killing it. They're really doing amazing things. I like that person. I want to keep them with me. I want to bring them with me when I go to important meetings, and I want to give them face time to decision makers, which is also a high motivator for hypos. Bring them in front of decision makers. Let them present their ideas. Obviously, you all know what the story is about micromanaging. Not appreciating honesty, hard work, loyalty. Hypos feel very loyal. The program I'm going to talk to you about, show a little video clip, talks about the program we developed in Athens. And they feel very loyal, and they try really hard to stay with you. But if you're not doing these things, they are gonna go. And I agree with Tom stating that, you know, he doesn't expect people to stay. You know, when you interview someone and say, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? You're kind of setting up to say, oh, well, I see myself here, and I'm going to be doing this and creating this, and I'm going to be doing that. You know what the answer is? I see myself in an environment that's innovative. I see myself in a culture that cares about the community, like the mayor in Durham. I see myself growing, being part of an organization that engages me, that continues my professional development, that exposes me to new ideas, that is diverse in every single way that you can be diverse. That's where I see myself. What'd you just tell the committee? That was exactly what I was thinking. What's your name? Katie. She's brilliant. What'd you say?
Step it up.
Yeah, they just told you better step it up if you want to keep me. I'm just telling you. These hypos aren't coming in and telling you stories and saying, I'm going to be here forever. I'm going to live here for the next 6 years. I'm going to raise my children here. I'm going to retire here. Hopefully the hypos are saying, here's the culture I see myself in 5 years from now. Yes, Pam. Okay. You click the link on that. Whoop. This is a program we developed in Athens for our high potential employees, and it kind of tells the story all by itself. Thank you, Kaylee.
The Innovation Ambassadors is a year-long program for employees below the director level. It focuses on leadership training and development and emphasizes group collaboration across multiple departments.
What we're doing here today is we've reached deep in the organization, and we brought some folks out here that have a lot to offer in terms of creativity and innovation. And today is a relationship building event. It's a fun event. Get out of your comfort zone a little bit, get to know these other folks, because we're going to ask them to collaborate going forward.
You got to earn this. I want to see the top 4 people. You got 7 minutes to move your booty and get this done. Go!
Today's event is more about building collaboration across the government. The makeup of the Alliance Ambassador team are made up of employees from all across the government with every department, every function.
One of the things that the manager's office wanted to introduce was the emergenetics profile and concepts here because it's a strengths-based tool. It improves the way we communicate with one another. What we're learning is how we compare to one another in this group, and then different ways that we can communicate across groups, especially when our preferences are very opposite to one another.
The beehives are the organized groups where we break off into small sections in the group and discuss the heart of any project.
And the point of that process is to address needs, issues, or problems that have come forward through the departments themselves. So in a hive, we're going to work together to see if we can find some sort of solution or meet that need.
When you think about a team and how that's different than saying we've got a hive working, because when bees get together in a hive, they make honey, and we wanted to see what this group could do. And so what we pretty much learned is get out of their way and let them do it.
What's important is this ambassador team is we want to bring new ideas, new innovations. This is the next generation of leadership for our government, and we have so many great opportunities, and we want them to be part of that and add value to what we're doing in our organization.
I think the long-term goal of this engagement, this opportunity, this collaboration is really, as we think about an organization that continues to improve, that continues to get better, it's really going to take the employees within our organization to really tap in and harness energies and thought processes and best practices from across the unified government, from across organizational lines in both public, private, and nonprofit. So our goal is to bring all that energy together with one collaborative effort, one group.
And if we can infuse emergenetics and strengths-based language into our culture here, we can elevate our leadership abilities, we can elevate everything that we do with service delivery to our customers. And so this is just sort of blazing a new trail in how can we elevate our interactions, our interpersonal skills, and our leadership competencies.
And I think I've made some lifelong friends and relationships and just learned a lot about how I can do things better with having the different resources now added to my tool belt.
The easy thing would be say, I don't have time. The hard thing to do was say, how can I help? Let me roll up my sleeves, let me dig in. And that's what they did. And today was just a beautiful ending, but also a beginning to see what they're going to do as alumni and see what the new ones that we usher in or what they see on the horizon. So that was 3 years ago. The video was just made last year, but we are on Innovation Ambassador 3.0 that's going to launch in August. So that whole video you saw, we're going to have another 34 people coming through in that program. And I'll be available afterwards if anybody wants to get more detail on that. Talented employees stay because they, and I think it was brought up several times yesterday, that's not the most important thing. but they're appreciated, they're listened to, they're promoted, they're involved in decisions, they're mentored, they're challenged. And there's something else besides mentoring that you can do, is help bring someone like Kaylee into a situation where someone might want to take her and bring her onto another committee or another commission. So mentoring, we all know what that is, but being a sponsor, that's different. What's a sponsor? Someone who does what? Hold it, we got someone back here, thank you.
I said advocates for you.
Yeah, what is a mentor do? How's that different than what a mentor
All right, good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to springtime in Athens, Georgia. It is, in fact,
That was really freaky. I was wondering what our mayor was doing here. Alrighty then, sorry. Refocus. You were saying the difference between mentoring and sponsoring.
I'm about to say that. The sponsor is an advocate for you and helps guide you down a path that you may not be able to blaze on your own. And a mentor, I would view as more of a coach or a reflection board, and may not have that specific role of sponsoring. It could be one and the same, but usually it could be distinct.
Yeah, and I appreciate your answer. What's your Aaron? The important thing to know is that there are some people who need mentoring, but the people in this room, the people in this conference need sponsoring. And that's getting them in a situation where they're visual and they're visual in their organization, they're seen, they're heard, their ideas are generated, the concerns that they have, the problems they see. Tom talked a lot about things that were broken. They're the folks who know what's broken and what's not effective, and we're not taking care of our citizens, and I'm right in front of them every day. Listen to me, okay? The thing I wanted to just say about the ambassadors is, and just about high pose in general, I had this guy that was a new department director, really young, and he came to run our transportation public works department. And so I was assigned to be his mentor. We call it Nexus Team. And so for 2 years, I just took him out to lunch a lot and asked him, how's it going? And, you know, what challenges are you running into? And he sent me a text 2 days ago. Guess what the text said? The eagle has landed. Because I knew he was interviewing with another organization. And I was like, please don't go, please don't go, please don't go. But guess what? He had outgrown his job. You know, he was ready for the next step. And so I called him. I was like, call me right now. Oh, my God. And so he called, and we had a chat. And it was shortly announced to the organization. So I would leave you, because we wanted to do some Q&A, I would leave you with the thought, pay attention to your runners. Make sure everybody's on the right seat in the bus. Tom has a great program. We have a program. There's 1 million programs out there that try to keep this group engaged and bubbling up with their ideas. I'm going to hand it over to Kaylee and turn it up to Q&A. Thank you for your time and attention.
Wow. As expected, dynamic speakers, great examples. I'm inspired. I don't know about y'all. I was shaking my head the entire time. Like, in agreement, in accordance with experiences where I could relate. Just wonderful job. Thank you both. Okay, so we're going to go from lunch from here, but I want to spend the next 10, 15 minutes if we can, maybe not as long, doing some questions. I know you guys have them. They had way too many great stories and great points. So if you could just stand up and say it really loud.
So Catherine, how do you know when you've arrived, when you've created the culture that you want? What indicators, what measures do you have?
Wow, he had to use the M word. Actually, that's an excellent question, and I'm glad you're here and asking those kind of questions, because we all should know, how do you know when you arrive? I just know that I've been in organizational development for 6 years, starting my 7th year, and every single year our mission and vision has changed with the organization. I've been an Athens clerk for 7 years, and I've had 5 directors. managers from the manager's office. We've had a lot of change, but the change has been amazing. The people who were there before were great, but what I measure is we're keeping more of the ambassadors. And guess what? Last year and soon to come, 4 of our ambassadors are becoming department directors. So that was kind of the whole idea of creating this ambassador program, is so that we could have some type of unofficial succession plan. And these really bright people were being exposed to management and leadership. And once a month, they would sit right in the room with the city manager and the assistant city managers, and they'd do a State of the Union. Here's what's going on. What kind of questions do you have? And they were just eating that up. And so we are working on the data analytics. I wish I had someone from my department right here who could just blast off a whole bunch of those numbers to you. But what I pay attention to is how many of our ambassadors from 3 years ago do we still have? How many? The 2 and the 3 here, and how many are being promoted within? Because that was part of our idea. So, sir, I don't know if there's a different aspect of that question that I'm not answering that you'd like to ask? Okay.
Who else? Yeah, Stephen.
This is a question for Tom. I'm just curious, I guess as you formed those EIGs, how much of them were like employees sharing their concerns? And I think some of the things I've seen as challenges to those employee groups are a lot of complaining and not a lot of action, people saying that they're going to do things and then not a lot of throughput, or aiming to do a quality program and then ending up with subpar results. Can you maybe
They're interesting, because I can tell you I'm not a fan of critics. I'm really not a fan of critics. I don't think they're productive in the organization. I really am attracted to solution-oriented efforts. And it was interesting to me because we had a couple of individuals that joined, signed up to be part of it, and they did have a very specific agenda. They didn't like the, whatever it was, the health benefits, or they didn't like the whatever policy it was. And so in the meeting, they kept bringing up, well, I think we're here to make a difference, and I think we need to fix this. I don't like this. And I didn't even have to say anything. The group kind of policed them themselves. And then it was interesting, in about 2 meetings, they never came back. And it was productive turnover in the team. But they did that policing themselves. I would say, well, let's, because I didn't want these either to be, I didn't want them to be working meetings either, where we would sit down and fix a policy. We can do that outside of this process, and we can take the input. I can tell you one quick story, how I got started as a young local government employee, thinking that maybe I could be involved, engaged, and make a difference, was when I was a fire lieutenant at the city of Tallahassee, and I was a critic, and I was complaining about the hose loads. If anyone's a firefighter in here, everyone argues about the type of load the way you load the hose on the truck. And I didn't like the way we loaded the hose on the truck. I thought we ought to do it differently. And the training chief was a mentor, and he said, well, if you don't like it, do something about it. And he said, I said, well, how do I do that? I'm, a brand new lieutenant, and we have 14 stations and all this. No one's going to listen to me. He said, you know what? We have policies and guidelines. They're just words. And he said, if you don't like the words, put them in a different format. Write them differently and give it to me. So I wrote a new policy with rationale, justification, a training program to go with it, handed it to him. A month later, he rolled out the program, and we changed the hose load. But over about a 2 or 3 year period, I ended up writing half of the guidelines and policies for the city of Tallahassee as a person who was really low down in the totem pole, because he taught me that you can make a difference, and policies and guidelines and rules are words. They're nothing else but things on a piece of paper, and if you don't like it, don't complain about it, but try and do something about it. So probably a long answer, but that's part of it.
So I have a question. How do you hold managers and department heads accountable for creating a culture that minimizes undesirable turnover rate?
Yeah, and I know we look at metrics and data, and we met with our department, our leadership team, 23 individuals every month, and we put all the stats up on the board, and we looked at attrition and turnover rate. We looked at where it was occurring, and that peer pressure put a lot of, I think, emphasis on it. When you measure something, people pay attention to it.
Did you break it down into desirable
We did, and also further even, because some of it was retirement, and some people were in a drop program, and some people, and we looked at whether it was an opportunity to go somewhere else that was a higher level position, and we tried to really drive down to turnover because we thought that was real, and some turnover was healthy, and some turnover we celebrated in some subtle way, but we did by measuring it and putting it up that way, and having our HR staff drill down into it. It was very, very helpful to look at it that way.
Just quickly, when high performers leave, what is a good strategy for communicating that to the org? And kind of a follow-up, we're going through some extreme culture shifts right now. How do you make that consistent across the org from different departments when we're breaking down silos and all that kind of stuff?
Well, you're bringing up a lot of great points about the high potential employee. The HIPO is very interested in zero silos. They want to have experience here. I do a lot of reading, and there's some out-of-the-box thinking about lending your employees to a vendor to have a different experience, lending your employees to another department to have another. So one of the pieces to your question was, the experiences that you give your HIPOs. When a HIPO leaves, I hate to say it, but I call the HR director. Okay, GMA, turn off the tape now. I call the HR director. I said, I will bet you a Diet Coke we're going to have director leave. I always know. I think it's part of my position. It's the kind of relationship I have with people. I do a lot of executive onboarding. And this guy who just left 2 days ago was amazing. And his only question, his first day was, do you think people are going to have a problem with my age? And I said, you're the only person who is. And he was an amazing leader, took the place to the sky, and was recruited away from us. So I think what we're trying to do is have collectively over the 30 departments, people starting to use their org chart and identify their HIPOs. And what are you doing with these people? And on a quarterly basis, reporting to your manager, this is how I'm growing these folks. Red, green, and yellow. Red meaning they're raw talent. Green meaning they're good to go, they're ready for a promotion. Yellow mean they need a little bit more time. So there's kind of a progression of what we're doing to try to keep the HIPOs, but as Tom says, we don't want to stand in someone's way of getting a better opportunity for their family. Did you want to say anything?
Just real quickly, I was fortunate in Sarasota County. They did a real good job. We did a real good job, but they did a real good job of celebrating people leaving. I mean, we would put their face went in the elevator, so everyone that rode the elevator up and down coming into the administration knew they were leaving. We'd have a get-together in that department, and it was always a good showing, and as the administrator, I always tried to go to those. The only time we didn't do that if there was, when we terminated people, even for a cause, we tried to do it subtly, because my view was you shouldn't try to harm someone because they weren't on the right seat of the bus. So that would sometimes be a little quieter, and it wouldn't be a firing, it'd be a separation and a resignation that would still be maybe celebrated at a lower level, but the rest of the time we try to do big celebrations. And I've been fortunate, some of our former EIG members still keep in touch with me on social media where they've left and have gone on to higher level positions in other governments.
One more question, then.
Yes, one more question, but could I say one more thing to you? Another thing that we do is we have executive leadership, and so all the directors once a month, I run an executive leadership, and we talk a lot about this group of people and knowing the telltale signs of when they're leaving, they're disengaged. You can physically watch a HIPO become disengaged, and so we're working on getting that message.
Yeah, no, great. Yeah.
I guess kind of along the lines, Catherine, I'm curious if you notice high performers in other departments. So from the innovation office, you work with different departments as you see them. How do you recommend celebrating them or encouraging their managers or department heads to celebrate them, perhaps even if you notice that they're amazing and they're not really being celebrated?
Great question. And you're from LA, right? Yeah, I remember yesterday. I was like, Miss LA, look at her. She is rocking it. I'm just saying. Okay, back to the question. The neat idea of how do we went from ambassadors 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0, and the ambassadors said, how about if you let us suggest some of our peers? Rather than the directors, rather than the manager's office, because the first year manager's office hand-selected the 30-something people. The next year we had kind of more department directors, manager's office, and a couple of ambassadors. Now, the list that we have, 34, is I would say 80% ambassador requested, that this person is not being seen, they're a great talent, they don't seek out the spotlight. We need to hear from this person. So we've gone from a manager select, realize that what we really want is for those who are out there doing this kind of work to be recommending people that they know that are also not doing that work and need to be put in the spotlight.
Just real quickly, I wanted to add, because one of the things, we did the same thing. We started with directors identifying individuals, and then they were sponsored from fellow members, which was really helped and added value. But we did hear from directors and senior level managers that they were out of the loop a little bit and were a little bit concerned. And my commitment to them is we're not going to set you up. You just have to trust us. What we hear in this group, this is not a critique session. We're not going to tolerate them coming in and talking bad about their manager or supervisor. That's not what the purpose of this is for. We're really solution oriented, positive energy. And after a year or so of this, the managers, I think, started to create some of that same environment within their departments, and the department heads felt more comfortable that they didn't have to be in the room when their employee was talking to the county administrator or the city manager. And so you do have to pay attention to the directors and the managers and not forget, their role in the organization as well.
I swear I'm going to stop talking. I just want to say one thing. One of the persons who reports to me I've tried to expose her a lot. She was in 1.0. She's now on a special project, What Works Cities, she reports to the manager's office. So she reports to who I report to. And sometimes she'll come back in the office and say, yeah, I was with mayor and commission today, and they were talking about blah, blah, blah. And I guess I can't tell you any more about it. So like her having that discussion, I wasn't sitting there, I should have been in front of mayor and commission. That was my subordinate. Now I'm like, go girl, get up there. And so I think there's this idea of old school, get out of the way, push these folks front and center, the sponsorship, and letting these people have an opportunity to shine in their bright ideas, because it's not about us. We're going to the nursing home. And I'm like, I am. Tom is running a marathon. I am going to the nursing home, but thank you. And if anybody wants to send me some cool articles about this stuff, reach out on LinkedIn, please feel free. And I'm going to let Haley wrap up.
Wow. Can we please thank Catherine and Tom for an amazing presentation, amazing discussion. I highly encourage you all to get connected with both of them. They're great resources. Catherine is not kidding how much she reads. Connect with her on LinkedIn. Connect with Tom. I constantly get, when I pull up my LinkedIn feed, I get stories and quotes and inspiration things that Catherine would put on there. And it just kind of, on that Monday morning, just kind of perks you up when you're looking at that stuff. So get connected. Thank you both so much. Great presentation. Would love to come work in Longboat Key and Athens, and I'm sure you all do too. So please connect with them after this session, and thank you all for being here, and go enjoy lunch.